Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the part of the world, and welcome to the South South District session of the West African IOSH Conference. We're glad to have you here, and we promise that it's going to be an educative session. So, for the introductory part of this session, I would like to invite Mrs. Kemi Adebuji Arumosoye to give us the introductory presentation. Kemi, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So today I'm going to be talking about the topic emotional intelligence as a catalyst to OSH performance. Next slide, please. What is emotional intelligence? When you talk about emotional intelligence, what comes to your mind is, do you feel emotional all the time? Of course, no. You have to be smart with your emotions. When you think about emotional intelligence, what comes to your mind is, should you be nice all the time? Of course, no. Be honest with yourself. When you talk about emotional intelligence, what comes to your mind lastly is, do you have to have touchy feelings? Of course, no. You should be aware of your feelings and also the feelings of others. So when you think of emotional intelligence, you think about increased leadership ability, you think about increased personal well-being, you think about increased team performance, reduced staff turnover, decrease occupational stress, and also improve decision making. Next slide, please. So Goldman 2012, he came up with a model called emotional intelligence model, and he divided it into two. So the first part talks about recognition, which involves the self-awareness and also social awareness. And also we have regulation, which talks about the self-management and also relationship management. When you talk about the self-awareness and also the self-management, you're talking about yourself as an individual. While when you talk about the social awareness and relationship management, you're talking about others. And self-awareness just talks about being self-confident at all time, and having emotional self-awareness and accurate self-awareness. Social awareness talk about empathy. That means trying ability to sympathize with others at all times, and also occupational awareness comes in there. When you talk about self-management, self-management just talks about self-control. It talks about trustworthiness. It talks about being adaptable at all time, no matter the situation you find yourself, and also making sure that you have initiative. Think about initiative, even as an occupational safety and health professionals too. And relationship management talks about influence. It talks about influence. It talks about teamwork and collaboration, and also building others. Next slide, please. So emotional intelligence, I'm going to divide emotional intelligence effect into two. I'm going to be speaking on the effect of high emotional intelligence and also the effect of low emotional intelligence. So I'll start by speaking about the high emotional intelligence. So there, like I said in the previous slides, relationship management talks about what collaboration and what good team spirit. So you're going to have increased collaboration and good team spirit. You're going to have recognition. That's why when companies should have the attitude that when an employee is doing well, they should recognize the employee because it boosts that employee's morale. And of course, having good safety culture in your organization, increased participation safety program, low claims, low accident rate, and also increased competitive edge. You also have reduced rates of absenteeism. Next slide, please. So the effect of low emotional intelligence, you're going to talk about poor safety culture, low morale, and attitude of work. Of course, when the employees, they are not inspired with their work, definitely you're going to have low morale, and also increased claim and increased injury rate due to non-adherence to OSH procedures, demotivated workforce, and also increase in number of illnesses and also number of investigation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to conclude by saying that a good OSH performance is one which has more leading indicators than the lagging indicators, and also introduction and application of emotional intelligence in workplace will help greatly to reduce our lagging indicators and also increase our leading indicators. If you want your safety culture to reach the next level, then you have to consider emotional intelligence, and training and coaching on emotional intelligence in workplaces is highly encouraged. Thank you. Buki, over to you.
For that brief introduction, Kemi, and that brings us to the plenary session. So we'll start with Junwon. Can you tell us about emotional intelligence and how it can be developed to drive positive OSH performance in the workplace?
Now, emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage one's own emotions, as well as the ability to, recognize, understand, and influence the emotions of others. So basically, you're managing your emotions as well as the emotions of others. It is basically it basically has to do with influencing the behavior of others in a positive way, of course, and it is largely agreed to be twice as important when compared to technical skills and intelligence quotient. Now, responding to the other part of the question, what has to do with driving positive OSH performance, AI can be developed to drive positive OSH performance when people are made to realize that it is right to behave safely, irrespective of the presence or absence of compliance rules and or sanctions. Now, what this means in a nutshell is that people must be encouraged to get to that point where they think about every action of theirs, weighing the consequences to themselves and to others, and then doing everything possible to focus on what is best for everyone. And of course, that may be affected by such consequences or by such actions or the consequences of their actions. Now, while it may not be possible to get everyone to this level of safe behavior or self or emotional intelligence, but what can be done is to identify those who have the traits and the ability to influence others, and then position them in leadership roles, or take in charge of teams, of course. And of course, doing this will go a long way in driving positive OSH performance and getting others to align with how things should be in terms of OSH. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that, Junwon. The next person up for questioning is Angela. So, what are the characteristics of emotional intelligence? And does the person's intelligence quotient, that's IQ, determine his emotional intelligence? Over to you, Angela.
Okay, thank you, Buki. Like Joe rightly said, emotional intelligence has to do with how you effectively blend your feelings and your thinking with the consequence of your actions in view. And the 5 characteristics of emotional intelligence are: 1, self-awareness, the ability to know your strengths, your weaknesses, your limitations as it relates to others. Second one is self-control, your ability to control your emotions, your ability to think of others when you are trying to react with the same consequence in view. Then the third one is motivation, knowing what pushes you, what your success, what drives your success factor and the success factor of others. And the fourth one is empathy. It goes beyond sympathy. Empathy is being able to view things from other people's perspective, because the natural mind will always want to believe that your take is the best, but empathy makes you to put yourself in other people's shoes and think from their own perspective. And the last but not the least is social skill, interpersonal relationships, your ability to communicate well with others and build lasting and healthy relationships. Then that takes us to the second leg of the question. Does one's IQ determine your emotional intelligence? The answer is no. Your intelligence quotient is a measure of your cognitive ability. And research has shown that it climax at a particular age of your life, while emotional intelligence is a blend. You are blending your thinking, you're feeling and also the feeling of others. So while IQ stagnates at a point, your emotional intelligence can be grown over time. It has shown that your IQ determines how smart you are, but your emotional intelligence determines how well you use that smartness. No wonder a lot of leaders, a lot of organizations are looking for people that have higher emotional intelligence, because while IQ can take you to a position, it is your EI that will make you to succeed in that position. Thank you, Buki.
All right, thank you very much for that. And Nnamdi, can you please tell us how workplace stress, tight schedules affect emotional intelligence of an employee? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Emotional intelligence is very important in stress management. Okay, there have been lots of studies done in this area, and these studies show that the higher your level of emotional intelligence, the better you are at managing job stress. And importantly, is that for you to manage stress, you need to identify the stressors. And like we've been told, emotional intelligence starts off with self-awareness, where you get to uh, identify your stressors and the emotions that they come with. And that's the first step, after which you're able to then work on controlling those emotions for yourself and for others as well. And so it's important that for folks who are listening to us, this is very timely. This discussion is very timely. I will encourage all of us to try and get emotional intelligence trainings and assessment to be able to improve our level of emotional intelligence. That would help us basically to manage job stress. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. And that brings us to Kemi. What are the signs of low emotional intelligence and how can it affect workplace performance and behaviors?
All right, thank you so much, Buki. So the signs of low emotional intelligence and how it can affect workplace performance. One is we have people that they are always right in an organization, and when they don't take corrections, it affects the job. And then we also have people that are obvious to other people's feelings. We also have people that behave insensitive. And when you have such people, definitely it's going to affect the work that they will be doing in the organization. And we also have people that also blame others for their problem. They are doing something wrong, and instead of them to take corrections of what they are doing wrong, they will be blaming others for their own faults. And we also have people that they try to have poor coping skills and also struggle with relationship. And because in an organization, you're going to meet a lot of people, but you need to have like a relationship with people so that your work is going to go smoothly. And when you don't do that, it's going to affect the job. And also lastly, we have people that they turn conversation towards themselves. So instead of them listening to others, they just turn the conversation to themselves, and it affects the job because now there's no teamwork spirit, there's no collaboration, and it's just about one person trying to make things happen, and it's really trying to cause problem in the organization. Thank you so much, Buki.
All right, thank you, Kemi, for that. And that brings us to Nnamdi. Nnamdi, I hope you can hear us.
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, so how does emotional intelligence affect leadership and how can it improve leadership effectiveness in the workplace?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much, Buki. Emotional intelligence is very important in leadership, okay, because it helps you to connect emotionally with your team and also to build a very good relationship, okay. And so when you build a very good relationship, then you can communicate better with your guys. Okay, so in fact, there have been studies that have been done, and results show that in terms of the skill sets that you need to perform well as a leader, that emotional intelligence comes on top of the list, even ahead of technical skills and all of that. So it's important that everyone who wants to be a leader, line manager, gets to take emotional intelligence trainings. In fact, I have a boss, or had a boss, once had a boss who would encourage us to have, sessions after work, like hang out for team bonding. And for him, he felt that it would encourage the team to communicate better, bond better, and also break barriers that existed between team members and the manager. And at the end of the day, when you bond with somebody one-on-one, you can be empathetic toward anything that concerns that person. So that way, you can communicate better. So emotional intelligence is very important in leadership, and everyone who's aspiring to be a leader needs to get a training on emotional intelligence. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. And that brings us to Angela. Should a boss be empathetic or sympathetic in relating with their staff? And in what ways can emotional intelligence be applied to OSH in the workplace?
Oh, once again, thank you, Buki. Emotional empathy, a lot of people that have one or two trainings on emotional intelligence, they tend to tell you empathy, empathy, empathy. Yes, a leader should have a great level of empathy, but you should blend it with sympathy. Empathy is your ability to view from other people's perspective, see from their own angle, and every staff wants empathy. But the truth is that too much of empathy without a proper balance can lead you to empathy trap. That way, you make weaklings out of your workers, always saying, oh, putting yourself in their position, you are not helping them at all times. You should have a great level of empathy, but you still need to balance it with sympathy. There should be a time that you have to push them a little so that you will make leaders out of them. And another disadvantage of empathizing too much is that it can also lead to depression on the part of that leader, because it will come to a point that you will be feeling used. So have empathy, view from other people's perspective, but also blend it with a little sympathy. Then you ask about how emotional intelligence can be applied to OHS or OSH, depending on the country you're coming from. Well, I'm going to look at the 5 characteristics. Each of them has a role. Self-awareness will help reduce error in the workplace. When you apply self-awareness, you know your limits, and you don't want to do something that you are not competent to do. Then a social skill will help people to be able to speak out, to be able to communicate hazard, and to be able to ask questions without fear of being bullied. Then empathy will help in resource management, in resource budgeting. When you are a leader and you have empathy, you're not just going to be thinking of what will bring profit to you. You're going to be thinking of how your staff will go home safely. So you will budget not just for the things that will improve the company's profitability, but you budget for things that will increase the health and welfare of your staff. Then you can also apply motivation, because one thing that makes staff to want to work is when you know what motivates them. Because sometimes you can wrongly motivate and you think that you are doing the right thing. You can give a staff so much money and yet he will not be motivated, because that staff motivation may just be a little increase in his responsibility. So emotional intelligence will be able to help you identify what motivates you and what motivates others. Then another area is incident investigation and risk perception. If the natural tendency of every human is to rush into conclusion, but someone that have high level of emotional intelligence, we want to hear from everybody before making a decision, and it takes a whole lot from someone. You think it might be easy, but that's natural until you are highly trained in emotional intelligence. You will want to conclude quickly. Then empathy, we want to help. Empathy also help you in incident investigation, because sometimes the rules might be there, yes. People might break the rule, but a little empathy might make you to know the root cause of why people are breaking rules, so that it will not just be punishment and punishment and people are not changing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for that brief explanation, Angela. And that brings us to Juwon. How can emotional intelligence be included in organizational training programs?
Okay, so thank you so much. Okay, the question is, how can emotional intelligence be included in organizational training programs? Now, this is a very important question because it goes a long way in how the emotional intelligence coach, and of course, the OSH performance is built or improved in an organization. Now, the usual practice by most organizations is to, of course, identify training gaps amongst the workforce, from which they then draw a training plan or training program to address the gaps identified. Now, of course, the usual practice by most organizations is to identify these training needs and training gaps using mediums like appraisals, and sometimes as a result of incidents and then corrective actions that follow, when you find out perhaps that the root cause is associated with, inability of a party to act emotionally intelligently, and so you tend to want to factor all of that into how you can correct that, talking about the corrective actions. And of course, this may be targeted to leaders who have the mandate to inspire their team members in the direction of achieving, the overall organizational objective, because you may not be able to engage all the workforce in this emotional intelligence training. And of course, this is usually the responsibility of Human Resources Department to implement. And of course, working with the OSH team would go a long way in ensuring that some of these things are factored into the training programs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Juwon. And that brings us to Kenny. How can you use emotional intelligence to increase team performance?
Okay, thank you so much, Buki. So first things first, as an individual, you need to practice self-awareness. You need to have the attitude to empathize with others. You need to utilize leadership skills. You need to be able to be approachable and sociable. And also, you need to practice ways to maintain a positive attitude and also be motivated at all times. You need to also utilize active listening skills. We have some people that they try, it's always their decision. They don't listen to others. And for an organization to have an increased team performance, you need to utilize an active listening skills, and also respond instead of reacting to conflict, and utilize an assertive style of communicating. Thank you so much, Buki. Over to you.
All right, thank you for that, Kemi. And that brings us, what signs in the workplace indicate the absence of emotional intelligence among workers, managers, and all other members of the workforce?
Okay. Oh, thank you, Kemi. When there is no emotional intelligence in the workplace, the first thing you see is that people work in silos because they're afraid of being bullied, they're afraid of being talked down. So they want to work in silos. And we know when people work in silos, they don't bring their best because everyone has his own strength. So it's when you put the strength together in form of teamwork that productivity is maximized. Then also, when there is lack of emotional intelligence, you see leaders that are always thinking of themselves without thinking of the workforce. So most times they stress up the workers under them. Then you have increased absenteeism because people they look for every reason not to be at work because they're afraid of being bullied, they're afraid of being embarrassed, and there is no creativity because people are afraid to try out something for fear that they might not be appreciated, or they might not their creativity might not be appreciated, or they may be shamed. Then you have lack of tolerance, cultural tolerance, gender insensitivity. Then you also have a situation where there is increased errors in the workplace because people don't know their limits. They want to impress and so go beyond their limits, thus increasing accident rate in the workplace. And another major a major indicator of a workplace that is void of emotional intelligence is workplace violence. Because some people will bottle up their feelings, and the next thing they react overboard whenever there is a challenge. So some of these things are indicators that that workplace lack emotional intelligence. Then when you also see people that they see a hazard, poor communication of hazard or risk perception, they see hazard and they tend to overlook it because they're not thinking that this thing, sometimes they'll say, I'm not going to work there. If you empathize, you wouldn't want to see a hazard and not communicate with the rest person, because you're also feeling for the person that even if you are not harmed, the other person too can be harmed. So those are some of the things. When you see a workplace where people don't care about others, the hazards are not well communicated, there is no love, there's no coherence, there's no team spirit, there is high level of stress, you know that that workplace lack emotional intelligence.
All right, thank you very much for that, Angela. And that brings us to the end of the session. But before we go, do we have any closing words or closing remarks? So I was saying that, well, we're in our closing remarks. So in what way can we advise people about bringing emotional intelligence into their work system so that after this session, participants will be able to know that emotional intelligence is a very important ingredient in the workplace. So, Kemi, can you give us your closing words?
Okay, thank you, Boke. Okay, I'll just say that for every organization, once you have like a safety department, the safety practitioner need to encourage the employer that emotional intelligence should be one thing they need to put as a primary thing, because everyone in the organization needs to go for emotional intelligence training. Even the safety practitioner, they can also train them. So training and coaching on emotional intelligence in the workplace is highly encouraged. So that's what I'll just say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Nnamdi, can you give us your closing words?
Okay, thank you very much. For me, it's just to say that the workplace is changing, and also we have emerging technologies that also increasing workplace stress. And for everyone who's at the workplace, for you to be able to manage stress going forward, I would recommend that you get emotional intelligence training. And for those who also aspiring to be managers going forward, this is very important. It cannot be the importance of emotional intelligence training cannot be overemphasized. Thank you so much, guys, and hope you you do well at the workplace.
All right, thank you so much. And Angela, that brings us to you. What are your closing words?
Okay. Thank you. In conclusion, I want to tell you that yes, your technical skills is required. It will give you the job. But the truth is that if you must succeed, if you must make a mark in today's world, in today's work environment, you have to be emotionally intelligent. And it is never too late to study, to take trainings, to take courses on emotional intelligence. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Joel, last words before we wrap up the session.
All right, thank you so much. So my parting closing remarks would be that, of course, you know that for organizations to, for people to get to do things, they need to be aware of it. And of course, that is what IOSH is doing through its West Africa division to raise more awareness about emotional intelligence. And of course, the more we talk about it, the more people are aware of it, the more people realize that they need to make emotional intelligence a part of their work culture, and of course, incorporate into their training programs, and of course, to boost their productivity and improve OS's performance. So that will be it for me. Of course, I want to wish everybody a safe work environment, and of course, get emotionally intelligent. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much to our panelists for this wonderful session. And we look forward to having you some other time for another session. Thank you so much. And I know that the panelists will be open to questions when the questions arise. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for listening to the session that we had. And from our chats, we can see that we already have some questions streaming in for our panelists. So let's see. The first question we have here is, how does emotional intelligence improve on worker engagement? Juwon, can you please give us the answer to the question? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bukola, and of course, to the one who asked the question. All right, emotional intelligence can help improve worker engagement, not just in the way Nnamdi rightly mentioned, such that, barriers between individuals are eliminated. And of course, this makes it easy for workers to be open and willing to collaborate with others, and then contributing whatever they can to the overall growth of the organization. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that answer, Juwon. And we have another question here for Angela. What has been your experience on emotional empathy in the workplace?
Thank you, Kemi.
It's Buki, it's not Kemi.
Oh, Buki. Thank you, Buki. As a security and safety manager, I have a situation where I handle issues like workplace kidnap and all that. And one area I've been able to affect the family to get, because one thing in such situations, getting the trust of the family is always very difficult. But when they see that you empathize with them, you bring them to, you feel what they feel, is one such aspect of my job that really brought out so much empathy in me. When they see that you are interested in them, you really feel what they feel, they will open up to talk to you. And it always turns out making things easier for us during the handling of the exercise. And we end up not meeting them up at the end. Then they want to, apart from that, there are times that you will have workers that sincerely, they really want to do the job, but they don't know how to do it. It's empathy for you to be able, instead of just disciplining them, for them to come to you and tell you that, madam, I couldn't do this job because I really don't know how to do it. Without that fear that you're going to bully them, because sometimes we leaders will always bring out rules and we expect people to just abide by the rules without knowing that some persons have their specific limitations. So I've been able to apply empathy in knowing people's limitation and also knowing pains of families when they are kidnapped and every other aspect of my job.
All right, thank you very much for that. We're still looking out for questions. So if we have more questions, now is the time for us to drop our questions for the panelists while we wait.
Buki, somebody said some people are actually unteachable and pay no attention to details, even after being trained extensively. Dealing with such people can be very frustrating. How do you manage this type of people?
Unteachable people. Kemi, Can you give us the answer to that?
Okay, thank you so much, Buki. So yeah, we have some people that they try not to, even if you are teaching them, they try not to learn. You just don't relent. You continue teaching. First things first, you need to understand the person's character, understands who the person is, because emotional intelligence it talks about emotions of yourself and emotions of others. So once you understand this, you try to find out ways to know when to talk to such person so that the person can understand what you're saying. So keep trying till you get the information passed to that person. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Kemi. And the next question that we have here is, how do you appraise emotional intelligence? And that goes to Nnamdi.
Okay, thank you so much, Buki. This is maybe a hard one to crack, but I think that for you to be able to appraise emotional intelligence, like Angela already mentioned, there are certain things that you need to look out for, okay? For me, is if you're part of my team, I have to look at the way, whether you're a team player, okay? Because that's one way to show whether you really are in control of your emotions. So somebody who's a good team player could be an indicator that that guy really understands his emotions, and then he also understands the emotion of the team, and then a way to be able to work together to achieve a common purpose at the workplace. So there are various indicators anyway that show different levels of people's attitude to one another, to work, that you could look at. You could look at emotional outbursts. You could look at, like what Angela said, when there's low emotional intelligence at the workplace, then you could have the issues of bullying happening at the workplace, even at very high levels and things like that. But in summary, for you to appraise it, just look at the organizational culture, and then you can see those traits in there. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Nnamdi, for that question, for answering the question. And we have another one. How do we incorporate this into the OSH competence and training, seeing that this is not presently included in many OSH curriculums? So, Juwon, can you give us the answer to that? Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Buki, and of course for the one who asked question. Now it's a two-way thing, the way I see it. From the perspective of training providers as well as organizations, internal training arrangements. So of course, the OSH practitioners or process owners in those departments or in those companies will need to work with human resource department to see how they can, put it in their training programs, depending on the kind of gaps that are being identified. And of course, for training providers, this is an opportunity for them to, come up with training programs that, organizations can also buy into, and of course, help improve OSH performance. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that answer, Juwon. And it brings us to another question on training, still trainings. What kind of trainings can one take on emotional intelligence? And if certifications courses are available, please share with us all. Thank you. So, Juwon, do you want to take it, or will Kemi take it?
I'll take it.
All right.
I'll take
Okay.
it. All right. Okay, thanks so much, Buki. Okay, yeah, I'll even encourage if IOSH can even start doing trainings on emotional intelligence, and even the training provider, like Joan said, it's very, very important. But for now, if you go online, Allison website, they do free courses on emotional intelligence. You also have free course on leadership and leadership skills, and also team building skills too. So there are a lot of free training on emotional intelligence on Allison, but you have to pay for the certificates when you're done. But the training is actually free. So if you can go to Allison website, you can get some free resource material. And I think IOSH and all the training provider online today, they should think of incorporating that in their system too. It's very, very important for organizations to have emotional intelligence, because every one of us, we need it. All right, thank you so much, Buki. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kemi. So that means you're giving trainers an assignment. All of us that are trainers and facilitators, you've given us an assignment to prepare packages. So we'll work on that. All right, we have another one. EI should be an important ingredient in the culture of the organization. So where there is lacking, who is responsible to drive this, to bring about its integration and part of the culture of the organization? Going forward, and how can the resistance to change be managed to ensure success? All right, Angela, can you break it down for us?
Okay, Martins, you just identified that EI should be an important ingredient in the culture of the organization. Like every other organizational cultural things, or other cultural issues, it should be driven by management. Because you must have management buy-in before resources will be deployed for trainings on emotional intelligence. Then you also said, how can you change management? How can you manage resistance to change? You that is the change manager, you have to first of all work on your own emotional intelligence. You should be able to communicate that change effectively. And that means you have to develop your social skills. You should be able to know the limit of those people. So self-regulation now comes in, so that when the people are not meeting up to expectation, you don't just yell at them. Then empathy will have to come in too, because you will now recognize that there was a time that you were in their position, and it took you a long time to be able to get to where you are now. So it will enable you to give them enough time to be able to acclimatize to that change that you desire. Then motivation, because you have to identify what motivates your workforce. Sometimes it could just be a thank you. Sometimes it could just be recognition. Sometimes it could just be a card. Sometimes it could just be promotion. So understand what motivates people. When you understand, it could just be a time off for them to spend time with their family. When you understand what motivates people, there will be less resistance to change. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that in-depth answer, Angela. And that brings us to the end of the Q&A session. On behalf of the IOSH South-South Network, I would like to say thank you very much for all those that listened in. Thank you very much to all that listened in, and also thank you very much to those that sent in their questions. And a huge thank you too for our panelists for being on ground to answer the question. Thank you very much and have a great day.